Let's all bring our palms together then, in veneration of the Perfect One, the Magnificent One, the Supremely Enlightened One, the Unvanquished One, our Teacher, our Master and our Guide. Let us remind ourselves that it is both a veneration to the Supreme Buddha as well as a veneration and a making of reverence to the cause that he stood for, which is Nibbāna, our happiness, our salvation. Let us also take this opportunity to observe the precepts and remind ourselves why it is we observe the precepts as we seek refuge in the Noble Triple Gem, the destination, the journey, and our practice. So, without further ado then, let us do that and make a start to today's proceedings. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Someone's got a question. We have learned about the concepts of no self and the absence of me and mine. In this context, how does one go through Sansara? And how is karma vipaka connected with when one is reborn? Okay. There are many questions to which I'm sure you'd love to get some answers, this being one among them. And I'm not going to answer that question. I don't know, maybe I will, maybe I won't. I say that because I feel I have a responsibility, and correct me if I'm wrong, to help you walk this path in the situations and the circumstances that you find yourselves in, because you can't do everything that I can do yet, because the time that you have available to you to commit to your salvation is quite limited, whereas I have every waking hour. There are many other things that you have to be getting on with. I mean, I know that is what it is, and I have accepted that. What I feel my responsibility is to hold your hand for as long as I can and take you to a point where from then on you can find the answers to these questions yourself. I can either answer all of your questions, or I can take you to the water and then you can do your own drinking. Or I can keep going to the well myself, or going to the river or wherever the water source myself, get some water and come and feed you. Or I'll take you to the water and then I'll tell you, there's all the water that you like, just fill your boots. Have as much as you like. Some of the questions that I'm sure you'll have in your mind are questions which relate to the latter, which is questions that you can come up with answers yourselves once you get to the water. And that's okay if what we were doing was a mere academic study of the Dhamma. As I've said right from the start, this is not intended for that. I mean, there will be other places or other sermons, other talks by various monks and even lay individuals whose intention will be to teach the Dhamma. And that's fair enough. I suppose myself and other monks and our monastery, on the other hand, our intention is to, actually let's put it this way, give you as little Dhamma as possible to help you to get to Nibbāna. That sounds a bit bizarre, doesn't it? It's not to give you as much Dhamma as possible, it's to give you as little Dhamma as possible to get you to Nibbāna. Do you or don't you like the sound of that? That could be a little bit unsettling. Why, Swami? No answer. If this is a Dhamma talk, should you not just come and talk the Dhamma and give us as much Dhamma as possible? Well, you see, think of this like a visit to your doctor. What would you rather have your doctor do? Give you as many or as much medicines as possible, as many drugs as possible, and drug you up so much that you can't even get up the following morning, or investigate your symptoms, do the diagnosis, and then give you just the right amount of medicine and not too much, so that you're healed. Because you know, too much, of course, all drugs have their side effects. The Dhamma does as well, if you take too much of it. Now, you might find it difficult to believe what I'm saying right now, but as someone who has been in the Dhamma for some time and have come across many individuals who, how shall we put it? Who have sometimes spent more time than is necessary studying the Dhamma and not applying the Dhamma. Later on learn to their regret that they haven't attained Nibbāna. Nothing's happened inside of them. No transformation has happened inside them. They're not happier. They just know more Dhamma. They know lots of Dhamma, they're just not happier. Then that defeats the purpose. Do you think the Buddha came into this world to teach us the Dhamma or to give us a taste of Nibbāna? What do you think the Buddha came here to do? Yeah, of course. He came into this world to give us a taste of Nibbāna, to give us peace of mind, to help us settle. He is a doctor. So what he did was he diagnosed his patients, that is all of us, and then he preached the Dhamma precisely what was required. If you only need one pill, I wouldn't want to give you two, because there is such a thing called too much Dhamma syndrome. I wouldn't want you to fall into that trap, because it's a very easy trap to fall into. It's very easy to fall into that trap, because the Dhamma is very interesting. And the more you study it, the more you are impressed by the Dhamma and the Buddha and so on, because there are no flaws in the Dhamma. It's perfect. Unlike science even, where sometimes you keep on, once you get to some point, you realize that some of the principles, some of the laws on which some other concepts have been developed have loopholes. They have some flaws, and so they need to be revised, and that's how science works. From time to time, scientists come along and they revise old information. But the Dhamma is not like that. Once it's preached, it is the truth by the Buddha, and then every other thing that he preaches is also the truth. So you will never come across a point of Dhamma, if it were preached by the Buddha, which you would later on realize that it was not the truth and so has to be revised or whatever. It's never going to be like that, and the more you study it, the more interesting it becomes, but not necessarily that you feel happier. So, my intention is to give you just the right amount of Dhamma, not too much. It won't be too little either, but just the right amount of Dhamma so that you can live a happier life. I have seen individuals, both lay and clergy, unfortunately, who know a lot of Dhamma, but they are angry all the time. Or they can't stop themselves from going after sensual delights. Or they have to entertain themselves from time to time. So what has the Dhamma done for them? Now, I'd like to answer part of this question. We have learned about the concepts of no self and the absence of me and mine. In this context, how does one go through samsara? The only thing I have an issue here with is the word reborn. Because what you're trying to understand, potentially, if I've understood the question correctly, is how does all this connect with you going through the cycle of samsara? You die, you're born again, die, you're born again, that sort of thing. Because what's more important, ladies and gentlemen, before you understand how you go through this rebirth process, what's more important is to understand how do we use this concept of anicca, dukkha and anatta, the truth, to help free yourself from the problem that you have right now in this birth. Let's worry about the next one once you're done with this one. If you can put your hand up and say, Swamin Wahansa, I'm free of desire, aversion, delusion, and in this lifetime I can guarantee that I will not suffer from hereafter. No regrets, no hurts, no pains, no annoyances. I don't feel lustful anymore. I'm always tranquil, always so serene, right? I feel like I'm on cloud 9 all the time. If you can tell me that you're always happy, no matter what the circumstances, no matter what goes on around you, come here, let's talk about what happens in your next life. But until then, I think we've got bigger fish to fry. I could explain to you what's going to happen to you after you die and how all of that works and the mechanism between rebirth and this life, next life and the life after and all that. But what good is that to you if when you get home, your wife hasn't cooked or your maid hasn't done the dishes and that makes you angry? Or as you drive home, right, someone pulls up in front of you and you're annoyed. What good is that then? Because here's the deal. Whatever problems you have in this life, right, you will have the same problems in your next life. So, instead of spending a lot of time trying to figure out what's going to happen in your next life, it's just more of the same stuff. It's what's happening in this life. We need to understand the concepts of Dhamma, but I think our focus should be how do we use the Dhamma to cure ourselves, to heal ourselves right now? Because right now, you don't need to ask anyone. See, let's take this the concept of rebirth. How do you know for certain? How do you know for certain that when you die you will be reborn? You will tell me, I've always known that, Swami Wahansa. How? Well, maybe your grandmother taught you when you were younger. Puta, paukaranne pa. Don't do sins because you'll be born in a bad place. So you just took it at face value. And then maybe at the Dhamma school you learned something about rebirth. Maybe when you were younger you were not the one to question things, you just took it, whatever someone said, you accepted that. But later on you started to have a few questions, but then as a good Buddhist, you're supposed to accept these things, right? I mean, come on, right? It's like as a good Christian, you're supposed to accept that there's God and Jesus is our Savior and so on. In the same manner, as a good Buddhist, you're supposed to accept that when you're dead, you'll be reborn. So that's part and parcel of you being a Buddhist, apparently. So if someone comes and asks you, are you a Buddhist? You go, yes. Then they need not even ask the next question, what about rebirth? You're supposed to accept it as true. It's almost like you can't be a Buddhist and then deny the possibility of rebirth, because then that doesn't qualify you to be a Buddhist. It's so much so, it's that much ingrained in us being Buddhists. But I don't think that's where our focus should be. However, if you don't mind me redefining this concept of rebirth, then I'm happy to have that conversation. When I say rebirth, what typically would come to your mind, I imagine, would be you live 120, we agreed last week. I have to save my skin. Right? So we agreed last week 120, right? So after your 120, on your 120th birthday and the day after, one day after that, you're going to go. Happy now? You can all live till then, all right? So on that day you're going to go. You saw this happen to your grandmother, you saw it happen to your great-grandmother, perhaps you saw it happen to some other members of your family, maybe some of your friends were first to go and you outlived them. So you were there when it happened, you went to the funerals, you've been there. So this is the death that you're talking about, that death. Conventional death, physical death, the body dies. It's medical. Medically, the doctor says, yep, can't revive, dead. And then you think they're going to be reborn. And you've heard in the scriptures, you've heard in the talks, you can either be reborn in the four great hells if you've done something bad and that's what you're reminded of when you die, or you're born in the blissful plane as a human being, as a deva, as a brahma. You've heard these things. But how do you know for certain? How do you know for sure? The only answer to that is, I'll have to what? Die and see. Well, I'm not sure that will work either. Not always. See, last birth also you died. Now you were born in this life as a human, and you're still not sure what happened last time round. See, it's not every birth in which you can recall what you were in your previous life. From what we know so far, if you are born with a physical body, then the tendency is for you to not be able to recall your previous life. Because there's a brain that connects your mind to memory. Namagutta. There's a brain that connects your mind to that. And of course, every time you get yourself a new physical form, that's a new brain. And because there's that interface that keeps getting reset every time you are born a human being, there is that problem, that slight problem. But as a preta, now we are starting to walk into the realm of the unseen in this world. So you've not seen it. Well, some people have, they say. I've never seen one, personally. I've seen people who behave like pretas. And that gives me full trust that there has to be people who are beings who die and then are born as pretas. It gives me full confidence in that fact. But I've not actually seen a preta, although I have seen people who get possessed, and then on occasions we've had to help them, and then when you help them, they regain their normal state. And sometimes they go back into that state. And the thing is this, right? Sometimes modern science might even say, how do you know that they're actually possessed? They're probably acting. So probably all an act. How do you know that it's the real thing, right? So all these questions will keep coming from the skeptics. And that's not to say that the skeptics are always wrong. Because we have to use an element of scientific thinking to help us understand these concepts, right? So we don't entirely reject science and the scientific method. But then, in the same breath, I will also add that just because science can't prove something, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, or that it's not there. For instance, how can science prove whether you love someone or not? Whether you're being truthful. Well, then you say there's a lie detector for that. You can cheat the lie detector, by the way. That's the thing. With a lot of these things, if you start going down that rabbit hole, you get lost. So I like to take a very practical approach. That's why the banner outside says a practical approach to the Dhamma. I like to take a very practical approach, and what I mean by a practical approach is what is true and applicable to you right here, right now. Today, if you have a problem, let's sort that out. Because if today you can solve that problem, tomorrow you won't have that problem. The same problems that you have in this life, ladies and gentlemen, I guarantee will be the problems that you will have in your next life. So where were we? Yes. So the Dhamma, the approach I like to take is for it to be practical and applicable, by which I want you to be able to go home and be happier than when you came here. If you can't do that, what good is the Dhamma? That's why I always ask you to ask yourself the question, are you a better human being? Ask the people around you, do they enjoy being with you more than they used to? Or do they still regret some of the choices that they've made? So these are the questions to which I want to help you find answers, because you know what? At school, they don't teach you that stuff. They don't teach you how to be a better human being. They'll teach you how to be a good scientist. They'll teach you how to be a good doctor, or a lawyer, or an engineer. But they won't teach you how to be a good human being. And just telling you to be a good human being is not good enough. Of course, I could tell you, don't get angry, all right? Okay? Don't be angry from here on, all right? And you'll all say, okay, Swami, we won't be angry from here on. Does that work? Don't you know that you shouldn't be angry? So just knowing that, does it stop you from being angry? Well, then it's useless, isn't it? Don't you know that it's pointless to regret? What has regret ever earned you? Have you ever been able to go back and rewind and fix the problem of the past? So what good is regret? So you know that regret is useless, but can you stop regretting? When it comes to you, it comes to you. So it's no point in me simply telling you, don't do this, don't do that, don't be this, don't be that. Because it's not you who's doing any of that. It's all driven by cause and effect. And because things are driven by cause and effect, until we eradicate the causes, the effects will keep on manifesting themselves. So unless you can tell me, I don't have any of those problems, Swami Nuhansa, my heart does not ignite with desire, I have no pains at night, I can go to sleep happy, I always have a peaceful night's sleep, I don't think about the events that happened that day or the day before. If someone I love or I'm in love with or I'm looking forward to being in love with, I find out one day that they have they have other plans with other people, right? Or they've cheated on me, or they've gotten into another relationship. It doesn't bother me. I'm okay. I'm fine. I'm fine either way, unless and until you can. There we go. Unless and until you can say that, there's not really much point in us trying to figure out what's going to happen in your next life, because it's going to be the same stuff. So I'd like to redefine what we mean by this word rebirth, and then I'm happy to have the conversation. So much so that I feel and I believe that when the Buddha talked about rebirth, he spent more time talking about this rebirth, the one that I'm going to propose to you, than this conventional rebirth, because that is a rebirth that even before the Buddha people knew of. It's not just a concept that appears in Buddhism, in Buddhist teaching, the conventional rebirth. You die, you're dead, 120, and you're born again. That's a conventional rebirth that people and schools outside of Buddhism also taught. But there's another kind of rebirth which you can only find in Buddhist teaching. That's only to be found in Buddhist teaching. That rebirth is the birth of yourself. When you feel that you are an entity, when you feel that you are a person, an individual, unique from everyone else, a sentient being who exists, the birth of that, because that keeps on happening with every chitta. Every time I do this, you are reborn. See? That's another version of you. That's another you. That's another you. And another you. Sometimes you might find it difficult to accept that. Swami Nuhansa, what do you mean I'm being reborn with every time you do that? I'm still alive. I'm the same person. No, that's not how it works. Every time I do this, you are reborn. It seems so fluid. Our 5 sensory organs, they keep bringing us stimuli from the outside world, and it seems like this whole experience is so fluid. But it's like a river. You walk up to a river and you think there's this one river that flows, right? But it's not so. At any moment, as you stand by a river, if you took a slice right where you stood, right, that is not the same river as the one that was a moment before. But for all intents and purposes, it's not a different river either, because it's the same stream. So it's not the same river, it's not a different river. And the same concept applies to you as well. You are not a different person, but you're not the same person either. Therefore, what we should be asking is, what happens to me not after I am dead? Is that a different person? Is that the same person? Because the same and the different, these two words, they're really confounding. We've got to put them to a side. Is it the same thing? Is it a different thing? We've got to put that to a side and ask a better question. How does all this work? What is the process? What's the mechanism? This word what, it's overrated. Because when we ask the question what, we want a specific answer, don't we? Or who, same thing. This is a what, you are a who. These two words are very misleading. Because every time you come up with an answer to these questions, you are partly right but mostly wrong. Every time you come up with an answer to the question, what is this? Who am I? You are only partly right, but you are mostly wrong. However, if you can ask the question, how is this? As in, hello, how are you? Not that. How is all this going on? How is this going on? How is this going on? How is this going on? Like, what's up? How is all this taking place? How is all this occurring? What's keeping all this like this? That is a better question to ask. Because then we are trying to understand the mechanism. We are trying to understand the dynamics. We are trying to understand really what the Buddha taught, cause and effect. Because cause and effect is not the cause and effect of a thing or an entity. Cause and effect is what there is, ladies and gentlemen. The moment you ask the cause and effect of what, you have failed. The cause and effect of this, wrong. Cause and effect. I'll explain to you, don't worry. You look as confused as you were right at the beginning. Right, let's break all that apart and try and make sense of it. So, right, I'm going to try and explain to you, simplify all that I explained just a moment ago, so that it makes sense to all of us. Some of these concepts can be a little bit abstract. But if they have no relevance in your day-to-day application, then there's no point in talking about it. It's just gobbledygook. Seriously, I will not be teaching you anything that is not going to apply to you in your day-to-day lives. But what's the point? Otherwise, it'll just be like going back to university. I learned a lot of things at university, which I have never used. Because they didn't teach me how to live my life. What they taught me was how to understand the world around me. And then I had to go to the University of Life again to learn how to live my life. And that's what I've been learning since. Now I'm a happier person. So, rebirth. You know the conventional rebirth, but we are not certain whether it actually happens or not. My point is, let's not worry about that. Because if it happens, then you will know when it happens. If it doesn't happen, then all the better for it. This is the last one. We just have to endure until the end, and then when this is done, done. Right? That's also a relief, isn't it? But if there are any among you who strongly believe that there is life after this, I'm in that school of thought. I agree with you, I subscribe to that. But if there are those who are skeptical about that, I say don't worry about it. Because I'm most certain there will be people among you who sometimes might even completely reject all Buddhist teaching right when we get to that point where we talk about rebirth. Because there are some people like that. If you talk about rebirth with them, they'll say, no, I don't accept any of what you've said so far. I mean, you don't have to be like that. One end of the spectrum or the other end of the spectrum. You don't have to be like that. But some people can be like that. In any case, there is a rebirth that I wish to talk to you about, and that rebirth has nothing to do with what's going to happen to you after this life. It's happening to you right now. So let me explain to you how that happens. That is relevant to you in this life. Okay? So, here's how that works. let's go back to some of the concepts that we talked about some weeks, maybe even a few months ago. And this will be a refresher for the most of you. For others, it might be new, but that's okay. This is not complicated. We have our 5 senses. And these 5 senses bring us information from the outside world. It brings us information from the outside world. These 5 senses help us to know that we're alive. Because when each of these senses come into contact with stimuli from the outside world, let's take the eye for instance, you need to perceive that. Actually, it would be better to say perception happens, rather than saying you need to perceive that. Perception happens. Keep it to that for now. This is what we call a chitta. It doesn't look like this because chittas don't look like anything. It's energy. What does light energy look like? It doesn't look like anything. But we represent a chitta in some way just to give us an idea. It is drawn in this manner to give you the indication that it is something that arises and passes away. That's why we draw it in this way. It arises and passes away. Because it passes away, there is of course always the opportunity for another chitta to arise. Because if that didn't pass away, how would the next chitta arise? So this is how a series of chitta arise and pass away, and that's how you work. So what's happening in you right now? This is happening in you right now. Chittas. At no point will you have 2 of these concurrently. There's only ever going to be 1 of them. Okay? So at any one time, you are alive, meaning there are chittas that are running in your physical bodies. The thing is, when you die, it's your physical body that breaks. It's not the mind that breaks. Each of these chittas, they are born now. So how old do you think is this chitta? How many years? How old do you think this chitta is? This one? That's the thing. You can't give an age to a chitta. Let me prove it to you. You heard that, right? Let's assume that was heard by an individual chitta. Let's assume that, just to keep things simple, that was heard by an individual chitta. You heard that as well, right? We agreed just a moment ago, or I explained to you, that no 2 chittas can arise and function at the same time. So for this to be heard and then for this to be heard, the chitta that arose before must have passed away and the next chitta would have arisen. So how long, what is the lifespan of a chitta? Do you think a chitta could live for 20 years, 30, 40? Am I going the right direction? No, it should be the opposite direction. If anything, a chitta, the Buddha says, the lifespan of a chitta, well, the Buddha doesn't say it in those exact words, but we can gather from the information that we have available to us that a chitta arises and passes away in a fraction of a second. In fact, maybe millions of chittas, if not even billions of chittas, probably arise and pass away in a matter of seconds. That's how fast you are. That's why it seems so fluid, all these experiences. So you don't experience stop, start, do you? You're looking at me right now. Does it feel like it's choppy? Like when you watch sometimes on a screen where the signal's not good, then it seems a bit choppy, right? Or when it's buffering and it's not clear. But here you see, this definition, you have it constantly throughout. So there's a constant stream of chittas, and they go on, they work so rapidly that you'd be fooled that this was one experience. And guess what? You are fooled. It seems like this is one experience, but in reality it's not. The truth is this: chittas arise and pass away so rapidly. And each of these chittas was born out of data from the outside world coming into contact with one of your senses. There's of course another sense here which I haven't drawn, which is the mind itself. So even when your eyes, ears, nose, tongue and body don't function, your mind can still do things like memory, for instance. But that's why I said earlier, when you have physical form, the mind relies on your brain. In our human form, the mind relies on your brain to interface with memory. And that's why if you have, a physical trauma of some sort, sometimes it affects your memory. But there are other beings to whom this is not a problem. But it's just the way that we are. Our minds interface with our brains. In fact, it interfaces with the brain for all of these, doesn't it? Your eye, your ear, your nose, your tongue, your body, it's all connected through the brain to the mind. And that's why scientists would tell you that there are parts of your brain that are sensitive to your sensory organs. So even when the mind wishes to draw data from places, like when you're in a coma, right? So then again, that's not your mind going into a coma. It's your brain that something's gone wrong with, or some other part of your body. In the same manner, when you die, now going back to conventional death, that's your physical body that dies. Whereas your mind continues. So if there's no body, where does it continue then? Well, it doesn't continue in this body, it continues in the next body, whichever form that next body might take. How all that works, we'll get on to later. But what I need you all to understand for now is that these two things are separate and distinct things. Although you feel that mind and body, you're one package, it's not really. The mind can function without this body just as well. In fact, the body is merely a slave to the mind. It just uses your body to get things, stuff from the outside world. That is all the mind uses the body for. When this body is done, it will just find another body. That's all. So, if you still feel that your body is a temple, it's not really. Your mind doesn't use it as one. The mind simply uses it as a temporary abode. Once it's done with that, it just moves on to the next one with no regard, with no gratitude whatsoever to the body that housed it for all those years. Right? So don't think too much about these bodies of yours. They'll be cast away just like that when the mind realizes, I can't make use of these anymore. That's all. Like a used tissue paper gets thrown in the bin, your mind will simply discard this body and move on to the next one as soon as it breaks. Which is to prove the point that the mind simply uses the body to get these sensory inputs. So then why do you have a liver? If sight, sound, smell, taste and touch is what you need, why a liver? What's a liver do? What's a liver doing? Can you feel your liver? I mean, unless you get inflammation of your liver, you can't feel it. So why do you need a liver? It's not to see, to smell, to taste, to touch, or to feel. Why a liver? Why kidneys? What's that for? Well, that's the supporting mechanism. Like you need a rib cage because you have lungs and you have a heart. Those things are there simply as, let's just say, auxiliary organs to keep all this functioning. So the day you don't have eyes, ears, nose, tongue and a body, by body I mean not the full body, I mean physical sensation, right? You can feel that's what I mean by body. Tactile sensations. The day that you no longer need these, because the mind no longer wants them, then the day you no longer have these, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and physical sensation, do you think you will be born with just a pair of lungs in a rib cage? Or just a heart, maybe a liver and a kidney, or a spleen? No, you won't need any of those the day you won't need these. This is what makes your world go round. Not your will, not your liver. Not your liver. Even your brain is only interesting because your brain interfaces these organs to the mind. So the mind is master. The mind is king. That's why those who take the time and energy to study the mind, they're the intelligent people. Because you are all mind. Mind is king. Mind is what's important. Mind is what makes the whole thing function. Keep your mind happy, you're happy. So, if you can understand what I've just explained to you, shift your focus, the focus of your life, more from your bodies to your minds. That's not to say you should not keep yourself fit and healthy. You should. But in my previous life, or not my previous life, in my lay life, I used to concern myself a lot about how I looked. Do you think I do now? If I did, would I look like this? I used to go to the gym not only because I needed some exercise. I wanted to buff myself up. Because I was interested in the way I looked, because it was important to me. I was interested in the way I brushed my hair. It was important to me because I thought, my physical body was an important part of me. But as I came across the Dhamma, I realized it's nothing really. This is merely a house for the mind. And as soon as the mind is done with this, it just discards it with no gratitude whatsoever. Have you not seen dead bodies rotting away? After all the servitude that it has done, all the service, 80 years of service, 80 years of relentless service to the mind, and when the mind decides, no, that's it, I need to move on to the next one, it just moves on. No concern, no consideration, no care whatsoever. Just like when your ex moved on to the next one. So, what? Did I touch on that? No. Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body. When these things come into contact with the outside world, a chitta is born. Okay? This is one form of rebirth. But this rebirth is not a problem. How do we define what is problematic and what is not problematic through the lens of Buddhism? What's a problem? What's not a problem? Well, the Buddha gave us the answer to this in his very first discourse. The Four Noble Truths. In the Four Noble Truths, he teaches us through the lens of Buddhism, what is it that is a problem? Anything else is not a problem, really. We don't need to do anything about it. The first noble truth of what? As you've heard it, Suffering, right? So, if you suffer, if you can feel suffering in you, then it's a problem. If you can't feel suffering, if suffering's not happening to you, don't worry about it. Buddhism is not going to do anything for you. So Buddhism, Buddhist teaching, the Buddha's doctrine, all of that is here to help you deal with suffering. If you have no suffering, then put Buddhism to a side and go and study something else, economics. Or whatever else. Forget Buddhism. It's of no use to you. Anyone here who is in that camp? I don't suffer, so I'm in answer. Well then, there we go. Buddhism is on the menu for all of us. Why? Because we suffer. But this is not suffering, ladies and gentlemen. All I've drawn here is consciousness. Now this is a topic I wanted to revisit because we talked about it a few weeks ago. What is consciousness? So it's good that we are back there. So let's continue this conversation. Today we can maybe try and bring that to some kind of conclusion. Consciousness. When a chitta is born, in that moment, so is perception. Because the chitta is born to perceive. It's like a pen is there to write. Yeah? The duster is there to erase. The cup is there to hold water or to drink water. A plate is there to eat. A chair is there to sit. A desk is there to do your work. What is chitta there for? To perceive. Absolutely, it's to perceive. I'll put that up here. That's what a chitta is there for. It's there to perceive. The fact that there's a pen in this room, okay? Now I want you all to pay attention. The fact that there's a pen in this room tells you, does it not, because this is something that is used to write, the fact that there's a pen in this room tells you something about the people in this room. What does that tell you? Let me ask the question again. This is the pen. What does it do? What will you use it for? To write. The fact that there is something that is used to write in this room tells you something about the people who use this room. What is that? They write. Yeah? They write. So, do you see plates in this room? Plates? No. So, what does that tell you about the people in this room? It's not a place to eat, absolutely. They wouldn't come here to eat. But you see, there are pens here, there's a desk here, there's a microphone here, there are speakers here, there are chairs. So by looking at your environment, you can make some kind of conclusion, some decisions or conclusions about what goes on in that place. Yes? Okay. What does a chitta do? Once again, it perceives. So the fact that there are chittas means perception is a necessity. If writing was not a necessity, you wouldn't have a pen in this room. Things are only born out of necessity. If there is no necessity, then it's not born. What's not born? What's not born? Whatever it is that needs to address, to fulfill the necessity is not born. Are you with me? Just give me a show of hands if you didn't get that. I'll explain that again. Alright. Okay. Thank you. And thank you. Always thank you. Anyone, if you don't understand, just put your hand up. I'm very grateful for that because I'd rather you tell me that you didn't understand it than just pretend that you do and then continue, because this is not a Dhamma school. It's a life school. No point in just learning the Dhamma and going home if you didn't know how that made sense to your life. Okay? Right. There's a cup here, a bowl, whatever you want to call it. Let's call it a cup, just to keep it simple. This cup is here because there's a necessity. I imagine one of these only comes into this room on a Sunday morning. I don't think it, am I right? Yes. One of these only comes into this room on a Sunday morning. But on other days of the week, you might have bottles. You might have cups that look differently, like the cups you have at home. But one of these bowls only come here on a Sunday morning. What does that tell you? There's a necessity that appears or arrives on Sunday morning. What is that necessity? The Swaminwahanse arrives. So Swaminwahanse arrives, and therefore you offer Swaminwahanse a water or gilampasa or something in a bowl, right? So by looking at an object and confirming its presence, can you also not make some inferences? Can you not infer a necessity by looking at an object? You can. So the fact that there's a pen here tells you that there's a necessity to write. The fact that there's a board here tells you that there's a necessity to draw things and explain to someone. The fact that there are lights in this room right now tells you that there's a necessity to light up this room. What about the fact that there's a camera there? Is it there just for no reason? No, it's there because there's a necessity. Why are there speakers in this room? Because there's a large audience. If there were just only 5 of you, you could sit down in front of me and we could have a chat. But because there's 200 of you, we need speakers. So you see, wherever there's an object of any sort, necessity always precedes that. Necessity is the precursor to whatever object that comes into being. Is that clear to everyone? Excellent. I have here, ladies and gentlemen, to present to you an object that serves the purpose of perception. Okay? So I present to you a chitta. Here's a chitta. If there's a chitta somewhere, what does that tell you about that environment? What necessity might be there? The necessity to perceive, absolutely. The necessity to perceive comes first. Chitta comes next. So there's a need to perceive, and that's why there's a chitta. In a moment, I'm going to connect these dots to something we spoke about 2 weeks ago, and then the light bulb will go on just like that. I see Swaminwahanse. So hang in there and pay attention. So I'm trying to connect 2 or 3 sermons that we've done and tie the knots, and then you'll see why I'm talking about this and the connection to value we spoke about 2 weeks ago. This is about consciousness and all that. Because your question was rebirth. Why are we being reborn? I'm trying to answer this question. Why are we being reborn? Right, what have we covered so far? Here's the ground we've covered so far. You know you have eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and a body. And inside this body there are also all the other various organs that keep the full thing up and running, right? That's why it's survival, it's sustenance. All of this brings information or data, if you like, to your mind. So that's the mind there. So through the brain, all this connects to the mind, right? That's the mind. And when these inputs arrive in the mind, you have one of these that is born, a chitta. Why is a chitta born? Because there's a need to perceive. Okay? So, what can you tell me about a chitta if there was no need for perception? If there was no need for perception, What else would there not be? If there was no Swamin Wahanse here, what else would there not be in this room? Give me a few things that wouldn't be there in this room if a Swamin Wahanse was not due to arrive today. They would not be. This bowl would not be here. What about this chair? That would not be here. Most other things would be. I mean, even the Buddha statue might be here. But because a Swamin Wahanse, how do you know that a Swamin Wahanse is due to arrive if this is your first visit here? You came in, you sat down. What were the signs that a Swamin Wahanse is due to arrive? Oh yes, you saw the pavada, right? And there was a bowl outside that you used to wash the monk's feet, right? Then you saw the dharmasana, and you saw the bowl. See, these were the signs that told you a monk is due to arrive. So if then someone gave an announcement, oh, sorry to say, Swamin Wahanse is not coming today. But you decide to, now that you are all here, you decide to have a party. The food's here, the drinks are here, the people are here, right? The speakers are now working, right? Put the music on, right? And I mean, might as well make the most of having come here on a Sunday morning, right? But before you start the party, there are a few things I hope, at least, you will remove from this room. What might those things be? You will remove the Buddha statue. Thank you. If you don't, the Buddha will get up and he'll walk out. What else might you remove from the room? You will remove the pavada, right? You remove the pavada. Will you need this anymore? The bowl? You won't need that anymore. Will you need the dharmasana? You won't need that anymore. So these things you will take out of the room. Why did those things leave the room? Because the Swamin Wahanse wasn't going to arrive, so the sermon was not going to happen. So if a sermon is not going to happen, you don't need those things. It is because there's a sermon that's going to happen, you needed those things. All fair? Got it? Excellent. Right. Why do we have a chitta? What is needed here? Perception needs to happen. Okay, then if there was no need for perception, what else can we take out of that equation? Come on. Chitta. Well done. That's not so difficult, is it? If there was no need for perception, a chitta would not be there, would not come into being. Because a chitta only serves that purpose. Arammana vijnana lakkanam chittam is what the Buddha says. A chitta is the mechanism that enables perception. So if perception was not a necessity, then a chitta would also not be a necessity. Well then tell me, I explained to you a moment ago that your existence right now is a chitta after chitta after chitta after chitta after chitta, and at one point your body is going to break and then the chitta is going to continue in another body. That is you going in samsara. Yes? Alright. So if a chitta's purpose is perception, it is here to serve the purpose of perception, the necessity of perception. If perception was not required, what would also not be required? A chitta would not be required. So if you don't need one chitta, how many more chittas do you also not need? You don't need any more chittas at all. So if a chitta is not born, what happened to samsara? That's it. Kaput. Done. So why are you in samsara then? You feel that you're in samsara because chittas keep on arising and passing away. Right? Why do chittas arise and pass away? Exactly, because you need to perceive. It's to serve the purpose of your need to perceive. You have these chittas, and these chittas arising and passing away that you experience as samsara. So for as long as you want to perceive, you, my dear friends, will be in goodbye. You will all be in samsara for as long as you want to perceive. Did you get that? It seems so harmless, doesn't it? Perception. Someone says, hey, I got some news for you. Yes, what is it? See, you ask that question. When you ask, what is it, what are you looking for? Put it in these words. Something to perceive. That's what you're looking for. In other words, instead of saying, what is it, you could say, can I perceive it, please? May I perceive? May I perceive it? Oh, you walk into a room. So say, you're hungry. You could ask someone, can I perceive some food, please? Why do you go to the park? Because you want to? What? Go for a walk. What is this go for a walk? Come on, let's talk in real terms. What does it actually mean to go for a walk? As you walk, what do? You perceive. As you walk down the park, right, you see the green grass around you. You see kids playing, children playing on the side. Right, someone's taking their dog for a walk. Right, maybe lovers holding hands or something. Right, the birds in the trees, they chirp. Right, and whatever's going on. All the while, why did you go to the park? Because you wanted to experience all this, right? So why did you go to the park again? Because you wanted to perceive. So for as long as you want to go to the park, you will always have to be in Sansara. There's a nice program on TV these days. Don't you guys ever learn? I mean, have I been singing to deaf ears? The moment I said that, what was the question that came into your mind? What do you want to do now that I've told you there's a nice TV program on TV? You want to do what? Perceive. Don't tell me you want to watch it. Because watching is just what's happening here. That's watching it. This is listening to it. This is smelling it, tasting it, touching it. Behind the curtains, what's going on? Perception, perceiving. So why do you have a TV at home? Because you want to perceive. And then you say, I want to come out of Sansara. Really? So your favorite artist brings out a new album. Your favorite music artist brings out a new album. What do you want to do? You want to perceive. And then you come here on a Sunday morning and say, Swami Nahansa, take us out of Sansara, will you? How can I take you out of Sansara when you want to be in it? Because Sansara, rebirth, is this. Get it out of your heads that Sansara, rebirth is this, you die and you're born again. Then you are completely blind to what's going on behind. This is the fact. It's because of this you need a physical body. That's why I said the mind is king. It's the mind that does all of this. It's the driver. Your body simply follows. Like the tail that follows the dog. Your body simply follows your mind. So when the dog's happy, what does the tail do? It wags. Yeah? So when the mind is happy, the body wags. That's what it does. As I said, it's simply a slave.
What about good thoughts?
Whatever those thoughts are, good or bad, as long as there are chittas that you want to perceive, right? Because that's what chittas serve. That's the purpose of perception. You're in samsara. See, let's take an example. You like to help people. Okay, you like to help people. Don't you all like to help people? Well, that's why you're in samsara. You like to hurt people. I know none of you like to, but let's assume there's someone who likes to hurt people. What can you say about them? They're also in samsara. So whether it's good deeds or bad deeds, you need chittas to execute those deeds because you want to do good. If ever you want to do anything, you need chittas for that. That's why Arahatan Vahanse is referred to as someone who is punya papa pahinassa. He doesn't want to do bad. That stopped when he understood the Dhamma, long time ago. And Arahatan Vahanse does not want to do good either. In other words, he has no desire to do good. For as long as he exists, he will serve. But he has no desire to keep coming back to keep doing good. He does not have this want to do good. He will do good. By he, I mean he, she, whoever, right? He will do good because it is what is necessary. But he doesn't have this urge, I have to do good today, I have to do something good today. Like some days when we wake up in the morning and you think to yourself, I have to do good, I have to do something good today. Arahatan Vahanse is not like that. Arahatan Vahanse is nature. Do you think the wind wants to blow? Do you think the wind wants to blow? No, right? It's just air. I mean, the air doesn't want to blow. But when there's an area of low pressure and the air is in an area of high pressure, what happens? It blows. Is that something the wind wishes to do? Is that something the wind wishes to do or the air wishes to do? Does it wish to blow? No. It has no wish to blow. Do you think water wishes to flow? Then how come there are rivers? How come there are rivers? That's merely because there's an area of high potential and low potential. There's a high potential, and so what happens? Gravity takes over and the water flows. The water has no intent or desire to flow. That's how you can keep water at rest. For how long? For as long as you like. Can you be in one place for as long as you like? I mean, for as long as you like, yes. Can I keep you in one place for as long as I like? Huh? No. Do you want me to prove that? Let's say you were asked to do something good. Okay? Let's say something good. Let's say chanting Pirit. Okay? I ask you to chant Pirit. And you're, as a good Buddhist, you understand the value of chanting Pirit, and so you start chanting Pirit. I say, all right, until I say stop, keep on chanting Pirit. And you start. You start with Namo Tassa Bhagavata and this and that. Then you start with the Karmi Manta Sutta and then the Ratana Sutta, right? And you start with those suttas and then you just keep on going. Now you come to the end of the Pirit book and you're looking at me like, can I stop? No, keep on going, keep on going. Right? So you've now been chanting for about 12 hours. I'm saying, no, carry on. I'll let you know when to stop. So you're doing something good now, right? That you're passing blessings to the whole universe, right? And everyone's energized and it's Pirit, right? This is the Buddha's words. Nothing bad going on. It's all good. You're not causing any harm to anyone. You only sat in one place, right? You're doing something very meritorious. How long can you keep doing this until you say, enough now, Swami. So can I just go and watch some TV or something? Can I stop now? Not just because you want to take a physical break. Not just because you're your cheeks have started to ache, or you're just, tired sitting in one place, you actually mentally now want to do something else. That's because you get mentally exhausted. You get mentally exhausted when you're doing one thing, but your mind wants to do another. That's when you feel mentally exhausted. That's why you never feel mentally exhausted when you're doing what you like to do. But if you were asked to do something, even if it was something you liked to do yesterday but you don't like to do it today, you feel mentally exhausted. Do you remember the first day at work? The first day you went into your new job, you didn't feel exhausted then. You liked doing it. The same thing you've been asked to do for the last 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years. By that point, I'm now just exhausted. Can I just find another job? I'm tired in this place. The same thing. You're still filing papers. You're still sending emails. You're still making calls, signing the deals, right? It's the same stuff. The same stuff you got to do on the first day. How come you're exhausted now? Because now you want to do something else. It's not the job that exhausts you, mentally I mean. It's your desire to be doing something else. Did you have a question for me, sir?
Now, you doing the sharing and knowledge, you're explaining to us what's happening, but should you be doing something else? Because this is also getting into this concept. So how do you balance that?
How do I balance it? Okay. So the gentleman's asking, should I not be doing something else right now rather than giving you the talk, because I'm also perceiving right now, right? Should I not be doing something to bring my samsara to an end? So here's the thing. As a monk, I have the very distinct privilege and fortune to only do the things that help me to bring this process to an end. That is why I have committed my life to this. I am never, I repeat, I am never required by anyone to do anything that is not conducive or supportive to bringing the rising and passing away of chittas to an end. Everything I do is for that. Unfortunately, I cannot say the same about the circumstances and the situations in which you find yourselves. Because in the lives that you live, a Sunday morning, perhaps this is what we're doing. We're talking about how can we bring samsara to an end. But in your day-to-day lives, you can't work towards that. You have to work towards, many other things. Let's say if your job was that of a TV producer. Let's just say your job is that of a TV producer. Just an arbitrary example. In that case, you can't do all your TV programs on sermons and just give people the dhamma, right? You have to keep them entertained. So you'll have to bring musical programs, other entertainment programs, maybe some sport, right? Maybe some cookery lessons or something, maybe some film, some whatever's, right? But these are things that are not going to help you end samsara. If anything, they keep on feeding you the stuff that makes you keep going on in samsara. I'll give you an example. Let's say there's a cricket match later on today. I don't know if there is, just saying. So don't think, Swami Nwanze also watches the match. Swami Nwanze has not watched a single match ever since he has become a monk, okay? I'm not interested in that stuff anymore. So let's say there's a match later on today. So when you go sit in front of your TV, right, or you go to the grounds, whatever, and you're now watching the game, right? You perceive. That's what you're doing. I mean, there's no such thing called watching a match or playing a game, bowling, batting, fielding. No, none of those things really are there. What's there is perceiving. Every single mind in the room, every single mind on the field is doing what? Perceiving. What's the umpire doing? Perceiving. What's the wicketkeeper doing? And the bowler and the batsman? They're all perceiving. That's what they're doing. And the spectators? Perceiving. The cameraman? Perceiving. They're all perceiving. So, when the first ball is thrown at the batsman, what does the batsman want to do? Somehow bring Sansara to a close. No, he has to perceive the ball now, right? In fact, if there's people around distracting him, what might he do? He say, hey, hang on, umpire, can you please ask him to get the hell out of this place? I can't focus. I need to focus. What is he actually saying? I need to perceive the ball right now. He wants to perceive. And the bowler, what does he want to do? It is part of his job. He has to perceive. Now, me, being here right now, I'm talking to you. Of course, I am perceiving you as well. I look at you, I look at the room, and I check to see you're all listening to the sermon, you can understand what I'm saying, right? If you look confused, I know that, right, let's go back a few steps and try and explain this in another way, right? So I also need to perceive. But what's my intention? What's my ultimate goal? I am perceiving so that we can bring perception to a close. Sir? Yes, you had a question?
Yeah. Like when you die, doesn't the whole sensory organs also, perceptions die as well?
Yes. So the body is there to aggregate all these sensory organs in one package. I mean, you're glad you have a body, otherwise your eyes would be here and your ears would you mind if you forgot to bring your ears with you?
So if your brain dies, then does the mind also die?
If the brain dies, your interface to the mind with the rest of your organs die. Your mind doesn't die.
Why does the mind die?
Sorry?
Why does the mind die?
No, but the mind doesn't die.
Why?
Why does it die or why does it not die?
Why does it not die?
Why does it not die? Because the mind is not housed in the brain. It's not the brain. So now it's like if your right arm dies, your left arm doesn't die. These are very distinct things. The mind is not the brain is not the mind. The brain is an interface. It's a physical organ that interfaces your sensory organs, and it just collects data and feeds it for the purpose of perception. So if you ask me, where is the mind? That's the wrong question to ask. In which part of your body is the mind, so that when that part breaks, your mind dies? That's not the question to be asking. Because here's what happens. When any of these parts break, right? If your eyes break, say that in other words you go blind. Okay, you still have the brain. The other sense organs will work. If you then go deaf and these organs also stop working, right? Now say in the state of a coma, for instance, right? Your sensory inputs are potentially not working as far as I understand it. Your sensory inputs are not working. Your brain is probably not doing much, but the mind's still there because the mind can still survive. So there's energy flowing in your body, your blood's still pumping, right? So your physical form is still an environment that is conducive to for the mind to exist. However, if the brain's not working, it cannot interface now with the rest of your body. So really, that existence to the mind is pretty much useless. That's not the time then to come and ask me, so I'm going to ask my mother's in a coma, should I pull the plug? Don't ask me that. I cannot answer that question for you. But then you will say, but then now she's not perceiving much either, is she? Maybe, but let's not go there. I really hope you never find yourself in a situation where you're the one who has to decide whether your mother or father lives or not. Because that's a very difficult situation to get yourself into. So I just hope that you never find yourself in that situation. But in answer to the good gentleman's question, when the brain breaks or any of the other parts break, that's the physical body that has broken. The mind is simply a resident in your body. Much like when you are renting a place. You're renting, if you ever rented, right? Once it's time to move on, right? You move into the next house. You move, right? And then you live there for some time. And if the landlord doesn't want to keep you any longer, or you think that it's not good anymore, then you decide to move on, right? So either one of these things will happen. Either the landlord kicks you out, or you move out. What's the connection? How do you connect that analogy to life? What is the landlord kicking you out? 120. Either that, or you run into a bus, and then the landlord kicks you out, right? Or I don't know, you become ill, and the landlord kicks you out. What about when you decide it's time and I have to leave? What's that called? That's called suicide. Yes. So the landlord's happy to keep you. The landlord's happy to keep you, but you want to leave. Either way, the mind has not found a way to cease itself because it still wants to perceive. Let me wrap this conversation up in this way. Your mind will not stop at anything until and unless you no longer have a need to perceive. For as long as you have the need to perceive, you cannot stop chittas from arising. Just because your body breaks does not mean your mind has given up. The moment your body breaks, your mind will find another body. If there is no body, it will create one for itself, just like it created this. Have you never wondered why? Now you have to step outside the known biology to try and find an answer to this question. So if this is too much out of your comfort zone, it's fine, right? We'll touch this topic on another day if we ever come to it. But just for the inquisitive minds among you all, have you never wondered why some of you are male and others are female? Who decided that? Don't talk about biology. Don't talk about genetics. Don't tell me there was Y and Y and there was X and Y. Now you're talking chromosomes and DNA. That's the physical body. I'm talking about the mind. See, your mind has taken seed, or has taken root, let's say, in a male or a female body. So at some point, the DNA composition of the embryo determined whether it was going to be a male or a female body. But by that point, the mind that was going to conceive in that embryo had already determined which one of those two forms it was going to take root in. That's why you're not always male. What you mean, like, what, tomorrow morning you realize that you're female all of a sudden? No, that's not what I mean. That's why in Sansara, you're not always male. Sometimes you're male, sometimes you're female. It's all determined by what the mind wants. If the mind takes up feminine tendencies, then the mind takes root in a female body. If the mind takes male tendencies, then the mind takes root in a male physical composition. It's all to do with mental tendencies. If, however, for either of these two situations, the mind needs to take human tendencies, that's why you had one of these two options. What if the mind takes feline tendencies, or canine tendencies, or bovine tendencies? You know what I'm talking about? Cats, dogs, and pigs. What if the mind took these tendencies? Then it will take seed or it will take root in that kind of combination. Because what the mind wants is to perceive. Whatever the mind wishes to perceive, it will create an environment that supports it to do that. And that's how you can have humans, devas, brahmas, and the 4 great hells as well. It's the tendency of the mind that determines the physical form that comes together that ends up becoming the house. Just like, to again bring back the familiar analogy, just like the house you live in, who decided? How many rooms it was going to have, what the landscaping was going to be, where the bathrooms were, where the washrooms were, the same thing, where the bedrooms were, where you want to have your garage. Like, even if you rent your place, you still looked a few houses before you decided on one, right? But whoever built that house built it for their own likes and dislikes. That was the landlord. But then if you as a tenant, a potential tenant, you'll keep going around a few places and then eventually you'll decide that's the right place for me. But if you're going to build your own house, then you can go to town now and build exactly what you want. But that's not to say that your tendency could change maybe in a few years' time, and then you'll make some renovations to your house. Sometimes you might knock one of the bedrooms down and you'll make something else and do some work on the house. Because there's a reason for that. The reason is what your mental tendency is. What would you like to perceive? Whatever you'd like to perceive, you create your environment to support that cause. That's how you choose the things you want to eat. Why do you wear your hair like this? Your hair? Some of you tie it back, others have it long, others have it curly, others have it straightened, others have it colored. Why? It's what the mind wants to perceive. Yes. So we'll get to that a bit later. Why the mind wishes to perceive X and not Y. Okay, we'll get to that later. But the fundamental concept here is your environment, this physical environment in which you find yourself, is determined by what the mind wishes to perceive. Sir?
Yeah, but then when it dies, like adult mind goes into a baby, so just that, and that teaches you.
Okay. So, right, how are we doing for time? Okay. Now, these are really interesting questions. Okay, they are very interesting, good questions. There are 2 things I'm keen on. One is to make sure that these questions lead you to Nibbāna. Okay? If they don't lead you to Nibbāna, I'll say no, we're not going to answer that question. But, so in my mind, I'm trying to connect whatever question you ask me and how that helps you to attain Nibbāna. Okay? Because just because it's interesting doesn't mean we should be talking about it. Then we can talk politics. That's also interesting. So the gentleman's question was, how come then an adult dies and then is born as a child or an infant? How does that happen? Well, when you die and you need a new body, you don't really have much choice. As human beings, the only way we can have a body is if we come out of a mother's womb. Once again, there are reasons for that. I'm not going to get that detail today. Why is it that we have to come out of a mother's womb? How come we can't be just born spontaneously? Interesting, right? Shall we bring out the Encyclopedia of Buddhism? Let's not go there, ladies and gentlemen. There are so many questions. Buddhism can explain the whole universe. So you might wonder, why have I never talked about all of these things with you before? Because that's not what's relevant to you. You come and tell me the day you don't get angry, you don't feel jealous, you don't feel desire, you don't fall for a pudding, right? There's a TV at home that you don't have no desire of watching. There's no desire to listen to music. Right? That's the day when you can become an anagarika. Come with me and I'll answer these questions for you. But for as long as you wish to exist in your sensual world, right, I will try and help you to come out of that. Because there's a grave danger of wanting to be in a sensual world. And that danger is the 4 great hells are part of that package. The human world, the 6 heavens, and the 4 great hells. These 11 worlds make up the sensual world. For as long as this might send a shiver down your spine, brace yourself for it. For as long as you wish to perceive smell, taste, and touch, you cannot get out of the sensual world. So, shall I ask you a question? Are you gone past the point where you are no longer interested in perceiving smell? I'm not talking about, I no longer want to smell nice things, Swami Nasa. Like, I don't go after nice things. I don't go after nice tastes. Deliciousness is not a big deal for me. I'm not really keen on like feeling softness and tenderness. I'm not a biggie on that. It's fine for me. I'm not talking about that. For as long as you wish to perceive these, not perceive the good stuff. I just mean plain, simple, perceive. For as long as you want to perceive these 3 things, you have to be born in the sensual world. Because the sensual world is where you get the organs that help you to perceive them. Because you see, these 3 perceptions require physical contact. These 2 don't. Sights and sounds, they don't require physical contact. These 3, smells, something in the air has to come and touch your nostrils. Your sense, your what do you call them? Olfactory organ. Something in your food has to come into contact with your tongue. You can't taste something. If I held a piece of chocolate, you can't taste that, can you? You can't smell it either. The only reason you can smell is because it dissolves in the air, and those air particles carry some of this matter to you, meaning there has to be physical contact. And then touch, obvious. For as long as you need these 3 things, you want to perceive these 3 things, you are not out of the sensual world, which means you are not out of danger. Because you have the 6 heavens, you have the 1 human world, and you have the 4 great hells. If you get into this, there's no coming out. There's no coming out of this because once you're here, you cannot be explained the dhamma. That's why I only ask you to bring the humans at home to the Sunday sermons. As much as you might love your pet dog, don't bring it here. Maybe you love your pet more than you love the other human beings at home. Still, don't bring them here. Because it's too late for them. At one point, they might have been human. But they began to adapt or adopt canine tendencies. Animal tendencies. Tendency to hurt, tendency to harm, tendency to take what doesn't belong to them. Anger, deep, great desire, these are tendencies which keep sending you down. Giving up, charity, releasing your mind from things, not hoarding, not clinging on to things much, letting go. These are tendencies that drive you up. See? The human world is a very distinctly interesting place because here you have the opportunity to either go up or go down. So really, being born a human being is nothing to throw a party about because this is the last step before you fall into the 4 great hells. Anything is better than this. However, the Buddha says that humans have a profound sense of wisdom, whereas the Devas and the Brahmas sorry. These are the side effects of having to fill in for Guru Handru. They're big shoes, very difficult to fill. So I've been talking a lot lately. Anyhow, so these are the tendencies. The lighter you are, the higher you rise. The more dense you are, of course, the lower you fall. See, when you people who you don't like much, right? There will be certain characteristics about them that you don't like. Maybe there are people who never give things. There are always people who ask for themselves. There are people who always think about themselves. They're very self-centered. They get angry all of the time. Right? They're not very thoughtful. They're not very kind. These are some of the reasons why you might not like someone. Think about someone you do like. Think about someone you do like. Just think of anyone you like. Aren't there people who give to others, whether that is love, whether that is something they might have, whether that is happiness? They're always very giving, aren't they? Very charitable, very generous. That's their nature. So they are there to keep on giving. They don't hoard or keep for themselves. Think about someone you don't like. They're very close. They keep to themselves maybe even sometimes. That is because they're very protective of themselves. These are some not going to go into detail today, but sometimes some people who are very closed, they don't interact much with others. It could be, not saying it is always, it could be because they're very protective of themselves. They don't open themselves up to others because they're very scared that someone might say something, do something, and it might hurt them. So like a tortoise that hides inside its shell, some people are like that. Sometimes, when you have introverts, once again, I'm not saying this is a blanket statement, right, on everyone, but sometimes it could be that. People don't say much because they're hurt. That's why some people don't interact much with others. I mean, there could be many reasons. I'm just saying this is one reason. In any case, if I ask you to think about someone you like, chances are it's because they're always very giving. They're very relaxed. They're very happy all the time. And they're always very upbeat, very positive most of the time. That's the kind of person you like. In fact, with them, you feel a lot of love. You feel a lot of affection, meaning they're always giving it out to you. If I ask you to think about someone you don't like, it's because you never felt love from that person. They can't think of you, or they can't think about you. They're always thinking about themselves. These are some of the reasons you might offer. So you see, you already have seen some of these tendencies. When you're angry, who do you care about the most? People around you? When you're lustful, who do you care about? People around you? Or about yourself? So when desire, aversion and delusion take over, who do you care about? People around you? No. Others? No. You think about yourself. See, so the more desire, aversion and delusion you have, the more you start thinking about yourself. And the more you start thinking about yourself, the more you become not a very nice person. And the more you become not a very nice person, the more dense you become. The more dense you become, the further down that you start going. This is a topic we have to talk about in much more detail. We'll do that on another day. But I want to bring the conversation back. Sorry, I'll answer the gentleman's question though. Why is it that when a human being dies, an old person, for instance, an adult, why are they born into a young child or as an infant? It's because that's the only option we have. As human beings, we can only come out of a mother's womb. Okay. So there's a possibility that you can be born human, absolutely. In fact, the way it works is, no, I'll answer the question because it was asked. Let's stop the questions for today, okay? Because when you ask a question, I don't want to leave you hanging. So I feel like I have to give you an answer because I like you. For as long as I like you, I'll answer your questions. So don't ask too many questions. I'm just kidding. I like you for as long as you want to attain Nibbāna. Okay? The day you come and tell me, no, I'm not interested in Nibbāna anymore. Then don't come back. Because you don't need my love after that, do you? There are plenty of people out there to love you and like you if you're not interested in Nibbāna. Yeah? Just put an advert in the newspaper. See how many people will come looking for you. But when you say, you put an advert on the newspaper, I want to attain Nibbāna, who's going to respond to that? No one will. They'll reply, say, are you crazy? So, can you be born human again? Yes, you can be born human again. The way it works is like this. It's like you have a bucket. You go to a well, you go to a river, and you dip the bucket in the water, and you take a bucket full. Okay? So, this bucket you bring home, and from that bucket or pail of water, you take water to drink, let's say. Every time you take a cup full of water from the pail, that's one life, one human life, 120 years. Once you're done with that, you take another cup. Once you're done with that, you take another cup, and another cup, and another cup. At one point, what happens? The water runs out, right? Then you need to go back and fetch another pail of water. At that time, you might go back to the same river, you might go to a different river, it depends. So that's why from the analogy, this pail is your bubble, is your karmic energy, an amount of karmic energy that has given you your human form. When you become a deva, it's the same thing. If you become an animal, it's the same thing. There's an amount of energy that you bring with you from which you're drawing right now. At some point, that energy is going to run out. And that does not mean necessarily that you die in this human flesh. What that means is your human existence comes to an end. But this is why we do merits. The more merits we do, we keep pumping water into that bucket. We keep pumping water into our merit pool so that chances are it's more likely that when we take a bucket of water, it's clear water, it's good water, not dirty water. What do I mean by dirty water? The four great hells. Right? So the more merits we do, the more we have clean water, and so the chances are you get a good bucket of water, good pail of water which is clean, which is drinkable and so on. So when you die in this life, will you be born human again? I can't tell you that for certain, because it all depends on how much karmic energy you brought with you when you were born human in this existence. So it could have been that you were a deva, and that lifetime went on for say 100,000 years, and then you died, and now you're human. Okay, maybe you have enough for 500,000 years, karmic energy. So a human life is say 100 years, then every time you are born and you live the full life expectancy, then 100 of this reduces. So you still have plenty left. So you just keep on being born human. Unless you do one of the unmeritorious deeds which are called doesn't always have to be, unless your karmic energy or your karma can change this. Your karma can change this. So at the point of your death, your karma can shift this. It can either get you to continue this 500 until the 500,000 expires, or you could even terminate this at one point and then jump to another kind of existence. Maybe this can be Deva, which can be either another 100,000, a million, 500,000, 5 million, 10 million. It all depends on how much karmic energy you have. Or it could also be the animal realm, which are one of the four great hells. It could be a preta. It could be in the niraya, which is the fire realm. So it could be any one of these. You might have heard of the 5 heinous sins, the pancha anantariya papa karma, the 5 heinous sins. If you do any one of these, which is shaking the blood of the Buddha, matricide, patricide, as in killing your mother or father, the murder of an arahant, and schism in the Sangha. This schism in the Sangha is not something that a lay person or a lay individual can do. It is only something that a higher ordained monk can do. So you are safe. Is that why you don't want to come to the satsang? Just in case. Huh? So you're safe there. And we don't have the Buddha now. So we are safe from that, which only leaves 3. Right? So you have to have a real grudge against a Rahatan Mahanse to want to terminate Rahatan Mahanse's life. But it might not always be that. It might be that you want to murder someone else and the Rahatan Mahanse also ends up dying. In that case, you have actually committed that heinous sin as well. It doesn't matter who you want to kill. As long as the intention to kill is in you, who dies is not up to your choosing. And then whoever dies, you have to pay the price. That's the way it works. I didn't decide the rules, I'm only sharing them with you. So I'm sorry to say, Sansara is a practical joke. And the laugh is on all of us. Okay? But you are still living with your mother and your father. If you are, be very careful. Be very careful if you are still living with your mother and father, because if you do something that ends up taking their life, that's a heinous sin. Here's what happens. It could be that you've only just started your existence as a human being, matters not. The moment you do that, down into the 4 great hells. The moment your life comes to an end, that's it. You can say goodbye to the rest of this, and for a very, very, very long time, you will be burning in the 4 great hells. That's why it's very, this is the stuff they have to teach in schools, I think. Because, children live with their parents. Fortunately, I think this is very fortunate that a child is dependent on their mother and father. I just think to myself sometimes, if a child were not dependent, either financially or for their security, right, or safety, if a child were not dependent, and it seems like that's the way the world's going to me, because even children want to be independent nowadays, right? At some point, they're just going to begin to feel like, parents they're just a nuisance. Right now, children are scared to do anything with their parents because they're dependent on them. Right? My mother feeds me, my father protects me, he's the one who pays my tuition fees, he's the one who pays my school fees. Right? So if anything happens to them, how can I live? How can I survive? But the way it's going, if children are given everything that they need to sustain themselves, right, the moment they come of a reasonably mature age where they can make sense of the world and they think, I'm 16 now, I'm an adult, I can live, I can make my own family, I can do whatever I want now. And then at some point where, a mother or a father comes and says, hey, not under my roof, you're doing any of this, stop that, listen to me, I'm your father. What if someone at school gives this child the idea, just kill the bugger? It's not uncommon, ladies and gentlemen. You laugh. It's not uncommon. These things are beginning to appear more and more on TV, apparently, people tell me, in movies and in dramas and so on. Murder is like eating biscuits nowadays, isn't it? What shall we have for tea? Let's murder someone. Each time you do this, it indoctrinates you. People ask me, is it okay for children to play computer games? Really? People ask me, is it okay for children to play violent computer games? Killing, shooting, such things? But it's only a computer, Swami. So what's the problem? No one's hurt. Yes, no one's physically hurt, but you can't imagine the mental damage it does. Because although no life is taken, to want to take life is an idea that keeps on running in the child's mind. So the next time the child's annoyed, what they've trained themselves to do is take life when they're annoyed. When someone bumps into you, kill them, shoot them, stab them, slice their throats. That's what they're used to doing. So the next time they're annoyed with their father, what do you think they're going to do? The father says, no, I'm not going to give you any more money. That's it. I've given you your fair share. No more. Don't ask me for any more. I want my money. No, you're not going to have any money. The child gets annoyed, goes for a weapon. It doesn't have to be much. And stabs the father. There's no hope. These are the imports that we've been bringing into our country. Violent computer games. It's killing our it's killing our youth, I tell you that. If you love your child, ladies and gentlemen, don't let your child play violent computer games. I'm not saying all computer games. Chess is okay. Maybe solitaire. But I can't give you names of games that I wouldn't recommend that because it's not nice. I shouldn't do that on a sermon. But you know what I mean. If the plot of the game, or the aim of the game is to carry a weapon and go shooting as much as you can, every time they pull on that trigger, what is the child thinking? Die, 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 right? That's what they're mentally training themselves to do. You tell me, when soldiers train, where do they train? They train in a simulated environment. Is that not the same training your child gets? I mean, they don't kill real people for practice in the army. Yeah? They don't do that in the forces. They don't kill real people for practice. They do it in a simulated environment. What's your child doing at home when they play computer games? Same thing. They're killing in a simulated environment. If you're going to ask me, Swaminatha, are they doing sins by doing that? Yes, they are. There are two kinds of sins. There's a sin that gives you rebirth in a bad place, and there's a sin that brings you misfortune in wherever you are born. Because that's what is a karma and a karma pada. When a karma is done, if a karma is done to full maturity, then it qualifies to bring you rebirth in a bad place or a good place. But everything we do are karma. Right? So imagine your child plays a computer game for 2 hours, and during those 2 hours, they look in their kill count on the side, 5,000. And he's very happy about that. I've killed 5,000 people. Each of those, in their mind, was a kill. Or as I say, there's a computer game, and what they have to do is slaughter animals. That's the computer game. Each time they do that, that's a slaughter. It's not a karma pata, but it's a karma. I mean, how can you not do a karma if you have ignorance and attachment within you? How can you? You can't. Because it's not you who chooses to do karma. Karma happens. In every chitta that has ignorance and attachment, karma happens. So parents, I tell you again, if you love your children, please keep them away from violent computer games. It's a menace now to our society. You're training your child to be a ruthless killer. One of these days, you're going to learn a lesson. I fear that you might not live to tell the tale. So if you're going to let your child play violent computer games, just make sure you don't annoy him. Because then you'll be sorry. Anytime the child's having thoughts of anger, resentment, greed, lust, right? Fear, terror, these are all damaging to the child's mind. Even if it's just horror. Do you think horror does good to a child? Horror is just fear, once again. So you think it's good to watch horror films? Swami Nasa, can you take us to Nibbāna, please? Horror is just another form of porn. It ruins you. Because every time you watch horror and you're horrified by what you see, you're thinking about yourself and protection for yourself. Because you're scared, right? The scare gives you, it ignites fear. Every time you have fear, what are you thinking about? Yourself. So I'm trying to get you to stop thinking about yourself. I'm trying to help you eradicate the sense of self. What does a horror film do? Keeps on reminding you that you have to keep yourself safe. So you tell me, ladies and gentlemen, how is it that someone can attain Nibbāna living this kind of life? Nibbāna is a dream for most people. It's just a dream. If you think you can just go and offer flowers at the temple and light a few oil lamps, and at the end of your lifetime you can attain Nibbāna. Tell me another joke. You're a good joker. Give me another one. I'm sorry, I don't mean any of this to hurt you or offend you or insult you. I hope you understand that, because I know some of these things that I am saying, I didn't come here planning to say these things, but this completely tears at the fabric of society. It rips it apart. I understand that. You're probably sat here wondering, how can I go home today? Because this is how I've built my life around me. At home I have a film collection. I have romance. What does romance do? Same thing again. It reminds you of yourself. It keeps on feeding the self. Then you have horror. Same thing. Comedy. Same thing. So what is a good film to watch? That's the only thing that you can do. That's the only thing that will give you an answer. To perceive Dhamma, that's why I said, perception for the sake of eradicating perception. That's why I said these Dhamma talks are not intended to teach you Dhamma. What if I just came here to teach you lots of Dhamma? What am I asking you to do again? Perceive the Dhamma. What's the point? How can you exit samsara if I just came here, taught you the Abhidhamma? You walk away having learnt it. Meaning, you have perceived it, put it into your memory, and you walk out of the room. What's the point? If the whole purpose of these talks has to be to help you to stop perception, right? Then more perception is not supportive unless that perception helps you to stop perception. Don't you agree? That's what I'm saying. Yesterday during the Dhamma talk, the thought came to me and I asked the question, what do we do on a birthday? Someone's birthday? We give them a cake, right? That's one of the worst things you could do. If you really love someone. Because when you give them a cake, you're feeding a desire that they already have. Because when you give a cake or whatever, you ask them, right, what cake do you like? They say, I like chocolate cake. Right, so for your birthday we make chocolate cake. So, and you make the chocolate cake and then as they eat it, what do you say? Sabbe satta bhavantu sukatatta. No, right? Right, you cut the cake, you offer the cake, and then after they've had one part, you slice, you ask them, how is it? Nice? And if they say it's nice, what do? Have another one. So what are you doing now? You're feeding that flame. You're feeding the fire. So who at home talks about, Pata, it's your birthday, okay, here's a cake, have the cake, but do you know that deliciousness is not in the cake? Nobody wants a party pooper like that. That's why you don't invite me to your birthday. Imagine if you invited me to your birthday. It's alright, I'm just kidding. Right? That would be your worst nightmare. Because while you're eating deliciously, digging away into your cake, I'd be set aside wondering, oh boy. And then if I had a chance to talk, I'd say, what are you doing right now? Why do you find that cake delicious? Do you think deliciousness is in the cake? Contemplate, man, contemplate. And I'll take the joy out of birthday. Now you won't want a birthday again. But that is the truth. Joy is not in a cake. Is this the first time you had a cake? How many cakes have you had by now? And you still look forward to the next one, right? Meaning cake never made you happy. So why do you keep looking forward to the next one? How many cakes must you have to be convinced that cake does not make you happy? That's the thing. For as long as ignorance prevails, this is never a conclusion that you would come to. And for as long as you have no noble association, ignorance is never something you will come out of. That's why the other day I asked you the question, however would a crazy man come to realize that he's crazy? That is an impossibility. It's beyond an improbability, it's actually an impossibility. How can a crazy man realize for himself that he's crazy? He can't. Why can he not? Because he's crazy. That's why this truth can only appear in the mind of a Buddha. That's why you and I cannot come up with this stuff. Keep trying if you want to. You will eventually when you become a Buddha. That's the only way this truth can be surfaced, ladies and gentlemen. When I think about that fact, oh my gosh, I am eternally grateful to the Buddha for having discovered this and then for having taught it. Today I speak as if, these are my facts and my figures and my data. It's not. This dhamma would never arise in my mind because I was a crazy man myself. How can a crazy man ever know that he's crazy? The only time it can happen is when a Supreme Buddha is born or a Pacceka Buddha is born. Arahata Buddhas are not born that way. Arahata Buddhas were crazy people who had the good fortune to come across someone who had come out of their insanity and then taught them how to do it for themselves. That's what I'm saying, in a worldly life, once again, I apologize for saying this, but in a worldly life, pretty much everything that's going on around you is only feeding the furnace. Every time you watch a film, every time you listen to music, every time you have a slice of cake, every time you go to a restaurant, every time your friends come around, every time you have a party, every time you read a book, every time you read a novel, every time you have a conversation, you're simply feeding the existence cycle. Chittas cannot come to an end for as long as you want to perceive. Because chittas are there for the purpose of perception. For as long as you wish to perceive, chittas will not stop. For as long as chittas won't stop, you can forget about coming out of samsara. Because samsara is nothing more than the arising and passing away of chittas. And for as long as you continue to support this, for as long as you are happy with this, or you have no way out or no way without not having a chitta, then you have to suffer everything that you have to go through. All these backaches, headaches, stomach aches, right? This aches, that aches, all these aches that you have to suffer right now from, all of this because this is going on right now. Why? Because you need the chittas to prevail, you need the five sense organs. Because the five sense organs must be there, it needs to have the supporting mechanism, which is the rest of your body. So you have a headache. What to do? Nothing. Suffer. And even if you didn't have a headache for the best part of your life, as you grow older, you can't stop your body going weak and frail. You can't stop, the cartilage is drying up. And then at one point your knee is going to give in. Your back's going to give in. At one point you're going to be bedridden, maybe for the next 5 years. And then all you can do is keep turning from one side to the other. And then your best friend becomes what? Bed sores. That's it. Then you need someone to come and turn you from left eye to the right and right to left. You just become a nuisance to other people. But suicide is still not the answer. That's the thing. People think euthanasia, yay, we found the answer. No. Anyone who's committed suicide has never been happy from there on. They go from it's from bad to worse. There's only one time where you can commit suicide and be happy. A Rahatan Vahanse develops a special ability to terminate their lives when they realize that their existence is no longer useful to people around them. A Rahatan Vahanse can do that. Once they realize that their existence is of no use to the people around them. But for anyone else who commits suicide, who takes their life, they'll wish they never died. But then it'll be too late and you won't be able to reverse or fix it. Oh, how sorry I feel for those young children who believe that the answer to their problem lies at the ground of a 7-story flat. Now there's no going back. I'm sure now they hope that they never died. But that's it. Chapter closed. Done. No fixing that. So, there's a lot we could talk about. Interesting, isn't it? I'm sure you'll be happy to stay till the end of the day. There's so much we could talk about. These you find this interesting because this is not just a mere Jataka story. I'm talking about your life. I'm talking about what's going on with you and what might be about to happen to you. This is practical Buddhism. So, sure, yeah. So are people working towards a solution to this problem? I think is in a nutshell. Yes, there are. That's what you're doing right now. That's what all of us at the monastery are doing. That's what people anywhere they might be, right? Once they figure out that there's only one answer to this problem. The problem we have, sir, ladies and gentlemen, is that people are looking for a solution to this problem, but they're lost. Ultimately, for as long as these chittas look for happiness, if they keep looking the wrong places, they'll have to keep being born again to find the answer. Because, you will keep doing something until you find the result. Until you find an answer, you'll keep on doing something, right? I mean, say you are thirsty, and I gave you salt water, You'll keep drinking it, you'll keep on drinking it until your belly bursts, because salt water does not quench your thirst. Right? But one day, if you come across clean water, that's when your thirst will be quenched and then you will stop. The problem that we've had, and we've always had, and we will have forever, is that very seldom do our merits come to fruition that bring us the association of the Dhamma. The Buddha himself said this. To come across a Buddha is very rare. To be born human is very rare. To come across noble companionship is very rare. To understand the Dhamma is very rare. Because all of these things to have lined up in a particular way requires infinite amounts of merit. And on which you are sitting right now. You are sitting on a gold mine. The fact that we have come together, the Dhamma is here for us, the Buddha, we are in an era of the Buddha. These are, although we might sometimes take things for granted, these are all rewards that we have achieved for the good, hard work that we've done in the past. Our merits. Now that we have this, the reason I speak to you in this manner is to encourage you to do something with the Dhamma and not let it pass you by. Because whether you do something about it with the Dhamma or not, your life is going to expire. That's why the other day I asked you, the fact that you're in this room today is an indicator, isn't it, that everything you've done in the past did not do it for you? You didn't find happiness, did you? How old are you now? That many years, you tried looking for happiness and you couldn't find it. And isn't that why you're in this room right now? What else was I going to offer you in this sermon? A free sandwich? A house? Some clothes? Some money? Nothing. The only promise I have is if you practice this, you will be happy. The fact that you have come to this shop means you couldn't find it in any of the previous shops that you went into. That's because you just didn't have the Dhamma. So now that we have the Dhamma, I keep on encouraging you to commit yourself as much as you can. That's why at our monastery we have a program for that. Whether you may know it or not, we have, by this point, 150 monks, young people. By young, I mean anyone this side of 120. People who have come forth because they want to practice the path, make use of their good, valuable lives to attain salvation, Nibbāna. For those who can't become monks, we have the Sila Shravaka program, the Sila Shravika program, the Sila Vesi program for those who can only come in on a weekend. What do we do when you come to the monastery? We sit down with you and we explain the Dhamma. That's what we do. Sometimes we sit as individuals, we sit as groups. We help you understand the Dhamma. That's what my teacher does for me. Helps me understand the Dhamma. Because the Dhamma is the only refuge. There's no other refuge. My teacher can't save me. The only way he can save me is by giving me the Dhamma. If my teacher didn't give me the Dhamma, I'd be as lost as the next one. So now that we have this Dhamma, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm trying to do is to invite you, as many of you as possible, to commit yourselves as much as possible to the noble path. Why do we call it the noble path? Because that's the path that takes you to ultimate happiness, unconditional happiness. A happiness where you are not cursed by your own desire. You don't have to suffer out of your own aversion. You don't have to suffer out of your own delusion. I don't make your suffering. Neither does the person sat next to you. You make your own suffering. You are the architect of your own suffering. Because you are the architect of your own suffering, you can stop it yourself. But to stop it, you need to understand the truth. You need to understand how your mind works. That's why right at the beginning I said, stop worrying about your physical bodies. Just make sure that it can survive. Feed it, shelter it, clothe it, and when it's not feeling well, treat it. These are the 4 things you need to do. Don't give it any much more attention or time. It doesn't deserve it. Don't overfeed it. Don't over-shelter it. Don't overdress it. Don't under either, but don't over. Just do enough to keep it alive. Because your purpose should be to treat the tenant in the body, the mind. If the mind is not treated, the moment this body breaks, it will find another one. You know from experience how much you have suffered because of your body. And that suffering will only keep on going up and up and up and up. Because age only brings more and more turmoil to you. It only brings more pains and aches. It's never going to be better than this. It is always only going to be worse than this. It was not the body that got another body. It was the mind that went shopping for a body. And now this is what you have. Once you have it, you can't fix it. If you were born handicapped, you're going to have to live handicapped. If you were born blind, you're going to have to live blind. If you were born deaf, you would not even hear me saying these things to you. Then what hope would be there? Just imagine, folks, if you were born deaf, how would you even be able to understand a path out of this, out of deafness? Can you imagine how destitute that must be? If you were born deaf, you would not be able to hear or listen to the path out of deafness. What would be the point of that human life? Think about it. And by saying this, I don't intend to hurt or insult anyone who was born deaf, so please don't take it that way. I know there'll be plenty of maybe comments later on saying, how dare you insult the deaf? I'm not insulting the deaf. I empathize with them. But then I have to remind you, those who are fully formed, those who have the privilege, those who have had the merits to be born with a full formed body, don't waste it away. You are born sane, you are born with a full physical form, you are born with the ability to get yourselves about, do what you have to do, right? Intelligence, smart, clever, able to understand things, able to make sense of the Dhamma, to make sense of the Dhamma, so that you could stop this nonsensical escapade. It makes no sense, ladies and gentlemen, to go in Sansara. Makes no sense. This is not the first time you were born human. This is not the first time you were born human. If I drew this line, I could draw it to the end of the world and back again. I could draw this line around the world and it would still not be complete. All of the lives you've had in Sansara, the times you've been born human, the times you were born devas, the times you were born brahmas, and then back down into the four great hells again, and then rotting in the four great hells for eons at a time, and then eventually you became a human again, but at that time there was no Buddha, no Dhamma, no Sangha, no refuge. Then what was the point of being human then? Nothing. So you lived a human life, did some merits as much as you possibly could. Right? You were in the association of both some good friends, but the majority bad friends, ignoble friends. And they continued to convince you that you have to fend for yourself, protect for yourself, hoard for yourself, build for yourself, and keep on doing things for yourself. In the course of doing that, you probably hurt people, harmed people, killed a few, slaughtered animals. Think of the bad things you might have done in this life itself. Think of the times, when you get angry, do you think you earn merits? For the duration of your anger, you think you earn merits? Who has to pay for that? The person on whom you show your anger, or the person who is angry? You have to pay for that. Then who's going to save you? Until you can stop yourself from becoming angry, you're going to have to pay for that. Each of these has consequences. Every time you're angry, you're throwing karmic energy. And that karmic energy is going to come back to you. Then you're going to suffer. When you were younger, don't you remember how you might have taken things that didn't belong to you? Perhaps you didn't know too much, but you knew it was stealing, but you didn't understand the consequences of it. You still took it nonetheless. Maybe you stole something you thought was pretty harmless. You took something from your friends, from your classmates. How many flies have you swatted by now? How many mosquitoes have you killed by now? The number is countless, isn't it? How many cockroaches have you killed by now? How many rats have you killed by now? You think you earned merits when you did that? That's taking life. Yes, it's not a human life. So the amount of demerit you earn is less than that of a human life, but it's still demerit nonetheless. When you set the trap for the rat, right, you plan for it. It's a meticulous plan. Maybe today when a mosquito comes and lands on you, you blow it away, you just, send it away. But those days, you'd hold it until it comes and lands on you. Because the bugger kept annoying you, right? So it flies around you, now you're annoyed by it. So then you say, right, well, come land here, will you? I'll teach you a lesson. So then you wait until it comes and lands, and then starts to dig in, and then the moment it does that, now you know it can't move, then you kill it. What you didn't realize is that had a price to pay. And you're not going to pay that price in the heavens or in the human world. That price is to be paid down below. That is what I'm trying to save you from. Because you're still human, and because you have not committed one of the 5 heinous sins still, you still have the opportunity to understand the Dhamma. But if ever you commit one of the 5 heinous sins, of course, as we discussed, you can only, 2 of it is more likely than any. If one of these 2 things happen, if out of your own hand your mother or your father is murdered, I can't save you in this life. It's too late. Because there's nothing can change that. From the moment you die, you get a fast track ticket into the 4 great hells. I feel really sorry for people who don't get to hear these things, but what can I do? I can't save every person. I can only save those who have merits. I can't save every life. Right now, there's probably someone planning to take their own life. Do you think that's not happening right now? In our country, the land of the Buddha, so we say. Right now, there's probably someone planning to take their own life. Maybe tomorrow you'll see it in the newspaper. Maybe today they're back in their bags. Maybe they're booking the train to Land's End. Tomorrow morning they'll be on their way. In 2 days' time, we'll all get to know about it. Young people, maybe she's only 25. Maybe he's only 30. A whole life left in front of them. A life in which if they had noble companionship, they could come out of this trap, this maze. But alas, they don't have the merits that you have. They don't know you. That's the problem. Because if they knew you, what would you have done? You would have brought them along. You would have sent them a link. This is why I ask you, this is not an appeal. I ask you, if you have as much love as I do towards humanity, share the truth with as many people as possible. If you think I speak the truth, then share this. If you think there's some other talk that gives the truth, share that. If you can speak the truth, then share that. Speak the truth. Because the truth is what sets you free. They're all human beings, ladies and gentlemen. One chance to save themselves. One chance after a long time. And look at what they use it for. Gaming, sport, watching TV, listening to music, eating, drinking, dancing, sleeping, most of it, educating themselves, going after degrees and this, that and what other, climbing the career ladder, setting themselves goals to become the most successful person in their fields, wanted to become the richest person alive, wanted to be the person who has the most expensive car, wanted to be the person who has the biggest house on the street. These are the goals that people set themselves when they were born human. You think that's the goal a human being should have? One chance to get out of this hell. One chance. The problem is they are surrounded by ignoble association. Right from when they start, they are surrounded by parents, friends, siblings, teachers who keep on telling them, when are you going to buy your house? When are you going to buy that car? Why don't you, apply for that job? Why don't you keep going up the ladder? When are you going to get married, my son? Have you found one yet? You're growing old now, so you need to find someone. How many mothers do you think how many mothers who go to the temple every Puya day and offer flowers and incense and light the oil lamp and worship the Buddha? They go to the temple every day. They wake up in the morning and they offer flowers at the Buddhikuti at home. How many of those mothers do you think talk to their children and ask them, Puta, when are you going to attain Nibbāna? How hypocritical. Every morning they'll bring their palms together and worship the Buddha and say, Natti me saranang anyam buddho me saranang varam. Buddha is the only refuge, Dhamma is the only refuge, Sangha is the only refuge. And then after they've done their rites and rituals in the morning, they go and ask their children, when are you going to get married? So what about that, what you just did in front of the Buddha statue 5 minutes ago? That's the world we live in. That's why I say I can't save everyone. But those who are meritorious enough to hear these words, not my words, just the truth. It doesn't have to be my words, it can come from anyone, you. Like I said, the Dhamma is not born in me, the Dhamma is born in the Buddha. The Buddha taught my teacher taught me. And one day he will teach this to others. But that's what a human life must be used for. Not to while away the years now that you are born. It's to bring meaning to those years, ladies and gentlemen, to bring meaning to those years. You have one chance, don't forget. One chance. So however old you are, you're not too late. Don't despair. Because you might think, oh, God Lord, I should have started this 20 years ago. Now I'm 65. Where do I go from here? No, don't despair. Because it doesn't take forever to understand this. It takes forever and more to do useless things. Because it's useless, so you have to keep on doing it until one day nothing happens. That's why they call useless things. But this is the only useful thing, the Dhamma. Perceive the Dhamma for the sake of terminating the need to perceive. That's why we perceive the Dhamma. That's why we study the Dhamma. For the sake of stopping the need for Dhamma. The Buddha says himself, Nissaranattaya na gahanattaya. In his words he says, the Dhamma is simply a raft to get you to the other side of the stream. It's not something to carry on your back. So once you've gotten to the other side of the stream, let go of it. Let go of it. Meaning, if you need only one raft to get to the other side, how many rafts do you need? How many rafts can you board to get to the other side? One. Then, what we need is one raft, one piece of Dhamma, and then practice that. Practice that. Continuously practice that. The oars are your practice. The destination on the other side, that's Buddha. Your raft, that's Dhamma. The oars, that's Sangha. It's your practice that will take you on your raft to the other side. Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, your only refuge. So, did you understand this part? I wanted to get this across, right? And then we meandered all sorts of places, talk about lots of different things today. It's kind of a mixed pot. But I hope you got the salient point from today's discussion. What I wanted to explain to you was the fact that perception, and for as long as you need perception, you can't stop chittas from being born. So if the question is, how does one go through samsara, and how is karma vipaka connected when one is reborn? That's around the topic that we talked about today. But first of all, you understood what rebirth is after all. Chittas being born, one after the other, after the other, after the other. And you will not be able to stop it until you stop the need to perceive. The need to know. The need to know. Someone comes, see this afternoon, someone will come up to you and say, hey, guess what? What's your question after that? What? And then they say, no, we'll talk about it later. Don't you start vexing inside? What do you normally tell them? Ayo, don't do like that, man. Well, you normally tell them, don't do that. If you're going to tell me, otherwise you shouldn't have told me that you were going to tell me something. Don't leave me hanging like that. What is that you're experiencing right now? The need to perceive. That's the need to know. What's those things they show you at the end of an episode to tell you what's coming next? A what? Trailers, right? Trailers. Why do you think trailers are so effective? Because you have the need to perceive. So, sure as hell, you will be there next week, same time, tuned in to watch what's going to happen next. That's why trailers are so effective. That's why advertising works. That's why they say, hey, we have the best new thing in town. Why don't you come and get it? $9.99 at your nearest supermarket. Now, what do you want? You want to perceive. Because you want to perceive, you have to go to the store and get it for $9.99. Even if it's not worth that much. Which you later realize it wasn't worth that much. But you didn't get it just because you wanted that. What you wanted was to perceive. People can quite easily dip their hands into your pockets because you have this disease. You part with your hard-earned cash so freely because you have a mental disease, the disease to know. So all they have to say is, hey, I have something for you. Shall I tell it? Yes. Click on this link and go to that and pay it and then come back and I'll tell you. For as long as you need to know, you have to exist. Right, shall we leave it there? Because I know there are lots more things you would like to know. But I think this is enough for you to think about. Please, let's make sure that we use the Dhamma for what the Buddha intended it be used for. I myself am like that. Even with my teacher, if I come across a new piece of Dhamma, sometimes I refer to the Tripitaka. I go and ask my teacher, is this something I need to know? He says, no, that's not interesting. I don't want to fill my head with stuff. Why? I just want to live a happy life, that's all. I don't want to know a lot. I just want to be happy a lot. I don't want to be very knowledgeable. I want to be very happy. Which one do you want? I don't want to be very rich. I just want to be happy. Some people are so poor, all they have is money. They have no happiness. I want to be known as the happiest man who ever lived, not the richest man. Not the most knowledgeable man. What's the point? Do you remember anything you learned from your last life? Do you remember anything you learned from your last life? Then what's the point? But if you were fully happy and content in your last life, you wouldn't have come in this life to seek it again. See? So becoming happy is the deal. Learn how to do that and you're a winner. If you don't learn that before you die, well, keep on trying. Right, let's conclude then. I do apologize if I hurt anyone or touched a nerve. It is never intended, but I will keep saying it if ever I feel that I might have said something to hurt you or offend you. Never, okay? But if you ever did feel that, please do know that it was not intended to be. This is only spoken with compassion. Because I need you to understand the gravity of the problem that you're in. People will not tell you that to your face. Because then they can't use you, that's why. I don't want to use you. I want to help you find your own peace, that's why. All right. Let's take a moment then to transfer the merits that we have all acquired. By making offerings to the infinite virtues of the Noble Triple Gem, listening to the Dhamma, inviting the Swami Maharaj to deliver the sermon, as well as creating a conducive environment for all to come along and practice the Dhamma. First and foremost, let us take a moment to transfer these merits to the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, upasikas and upasikas, who have since time immemorial protected and preserved the sublime teachings of the Buddha and passed it down through the generations of the noble lineage in the form of the Tripitaka, which is thankfully available to us today to study, understand and comprehend the Dhamma. Let us take a moment to transfer these merits to the monks and nuns resident in your local temples and nunneries who have always been by your side through thick and thin, come rain or shine, as well as the Mahanayakas and the Anugaka Theras of all the chapters. Let us also take a moment to transfer these merits to my teacher, Guru Swami Nuhanse, as well as all the monks resident at the monastery and the Anagarikas and the Anagarikas attached to the monastery. Let us take a moment to transfer these merits to those who make great efforts to disseminate the teachings of the Buddha, be that by transliterating these talks, sharing them out with others or inviting others to join them. May they all rejoice in these merits. Let us also take a moment to transfer these merits to our devotees and friends of the monastery, who for the sake of merits, to help them attain the supreme bliss of Nibbāna, continue to sustain the Mahasangha. This is all of you who provide the Mahasangha with shelter, alms, robes and medicines, as well as pass on their know-how and continue to extend their well wishes. May they all rejoice in these merits. By the power of these merits, may they be healed of any physical and mental ailments and overcome any obstacles to their spiritual progress. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the Noble Eightfold Path, and may they all attain the supreme bliss of Nibbāna. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us also take a moment to transfer these merits to our mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, nephews and nieces, our friends, our acquaintances, our employers and our employees, and our teachers, anyone and everyone who've made any effort in their ability to help us, support us and assist us in any way, shape or form. May they all rejoice in these merits, and by the power of these merits may they also be healed of any physical and mental ailments and overcome the obstacles to their spiritual progress. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the Noble Eightfold Path, and may they all attain the supreme bliss of Nibbāna. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us also take a moment to transfer these merits to the Devas and Brahmas, spirits and demons, primarily the Sakadeva, as well as all the numerous gods and deities who have committed themselves to fulfill and preserve the Sambuddha Sasana. Let us take a moment to transfer these merits to our guardian deities who keep a watchful eye over us and keep us out of harm's way. May they prosper in divine power and wisdom. May they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the Noble Eightfold Path, and may they all attain the supreme bliss of Nibbāna. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us also take a moment to transfer these merits to those who passed away in our name, our forefathers, our ancestors, reminding ourselves that it is in their blood, sweat and tears today we are able to enjoy the comforts of life as we do and practice the path in peace and harmony. Let us also transfer these merits to those who lost their lives in the wars, be they friend or foe, as well as members of the armed forces, as well as the police force who sacrificed their lives to protect the peace and harmony of our nation. Let us also transfer these lives, beg your pardon. Let us also transfer these merits to those who lost their lives in natural disasters and calamities such as tsunamis and earthquakes, landslides, fires, floods, pandemics, and so on, reminding ourselves that among them will be those who've been mothers and fathers to us, brothers and sisters to us, friends to us, people who have gone the extra mile on our behalf and who have left no stone unturned to help us, support us, and assist us. With an abundance of loving kindness and compassion towards all of them, let us transfer all the merits that we have acquired today. May, by the power of these merits, if any of them have been born in the woeful planes, they redeem themselves and be born in the blissful plane. May, by the power of these merits, they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and may they all attain the supreme bliss of Nibbāna. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And finally, may, by the power and the good grace of all the merits we have acquired throughout the day, we will witness the advent of hundreds of thousands of Arahatan Mahanses on this blessed land. And finally, may you and I and everyone who's helped make this program a success become a Arahatan Mahanse or an Arahat Terani Mahanse in this life itself and in the era of the Gautama Supreme Buddha itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May the blessings of the Noble Triple Gem be with you all. The members of the Mahasangha will now transfer their blessings to you. Rajagiriya nidatva dveshagiriya nidatva mohagiriya nidatva Nibbāna parama sukhayan Sukhita taravatva Nibbāna parama sukhayan Sukhita taravatva Mamada siyalu loka siyalu satvayo Nibbāna parama sukhayan Sukhita taravatva Nibbāna parama sukhayan Sukhita taravatva Nibbāna parama sukhayan Sukhita taravatva Rajagiriya niveva Dveshagiriya niveva Mohagiriya niveva Nivan sabha labeva Nivan sabha labeva Nivan sabha labeva Tunduange suvisi ananta maha guna belen siru loka siru sattayoma Nibbāna parama sukhayan sukhtita taravatva Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.